Okay, we're live. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our roundtable discussion, storytelling and visual culture in Black SWANA cinema, as part of the first ever virtual Arab Film Festival collab between the Arab American National Museum, Art East, Mizna, and the Arab Film and Media Institute. I'm Ruba El Melik, Literary Programs Fellow at Mizna and moderator for the evening. I'd like to say a few words about our panel tonight by way of introduction, mainly that this discussion came about as a response to, or rather, an evolution from the conversations around representation that are constantly invited to be a part of. Topic, no doubt, but we find the magic of our cultural creation is best captured in conversations about how we as Black people represent ourselves on the screen. Conversations around storytelling, creating, and reflecting. How do we feel when we see ourselves on the screen in the midst of stories that are complicating, challenging, and expanding our visual practice? Our histories of oral storytelling and visual engagement overlay all aspects of Black culture from Southwest Asia to North Africa and East Africa. And tonight, I'm so pleased to introduce three filmmakers who are students of storytelling, culture, identity, and history, and in many ways, pioneers in their creation. Allow me to introduce our guests for the night. First up, we have established filmmaker Hajooj Kuka. Hajooj is a filmmaker from Sudan. Kuka's 2014 feature documentary, Beats of the Antonov, premiered at the 2014 Toronto International Film Festival and won the People's Choice Documentary Award. His narrative feature debut, aKasha, premiered at the Venice International Critics Week and was included in the official selections of TIFF 2018 and AFI 2018. Kuka also trains and works with young filmmakers across Sudan to document their everyday lives using visual language with a focus on storytelling. Next up, we have Marwa Zein, award-winning Sudanese film director, scriptwriter, and producer for her acclaimed debut, Khartoum Offside, and acclaimed short fiction films, A Game and 1 Week, 2 Days. Khartoum Offside is awarded Best Documentary for 2019 by the 15th Africa Movie Academy Awards. The film had its world premiere at Berlinale Forum 2019 and officially selected in the most prestigious international festivals, Visions de Rio, CPH Docs, Hot Docs, and IDFA. Zain was born in Saudi Arabia and lived in Egypt. She's now doing her master's in film in Germany. Zain has worked as assistant director to many acclaimed Egyptian directors such as Hala Khalil, Khairi Bishara, and Dawood Abd Sayed. And last but not least, we welcome Lula Ali Ismaïl, a director and actress who lives in Djibouti. In 2011, she wrote, directed, and co-produced her first short shot in Djibouti, Lan. In 2013, she created her production company, Samawada Films, in Djibouti, and made a short drama, Second Chance, and a short documentary, Everybody Against Khat. In 2016, she worked as cast director and assistant to the director on the Djiboutian set of Wim Wenders' movie Submergence, and in 2019, she completed her first feature film, Dhalinyaro, which she directed, co-wrote, and co-produced. Thank you all for participating in this direction, and hello to all of our beautiful, incredible panelists, and thank you to everyone tuning in for your time and attention. I think a good place to start our conversation tonight is to talk about what drives all of your perceptions of visual culture and how that's captured in so much of what you all do for art. So, Hajooj, Lula, what do you think Black and African filmmakers in our communities are most inspired by? What is the Black imagery worth capturing in our communities?
So yeah, for me, what's worth capturing? Almost everything. Sudan is this place that hasn't been captured enough. We haven't. We have so many untold stories, like so many, so many, so many. So we didn't have a chance to be to experience ourselves on screen and for the world to experience us. So there's just telling the everyday story is a big thing. Telling the stories that everybody heard in our own way is a big thing. So right now for Sudan, just coming out of the revolution and slightly opening up, and having the chance for people to film in Sudan freely and take photographs and videos and create films. I'm expecting a boom to come in the next maybe 5 years. We still need some time. But if things go well, I feel like there's going to be so many stories that are going to be told. And what excites me the most is the availability of tools to create films that allows different people to have their voices told. So instead of being um, filmed and told by others, it's just having the ability to tell your own story is so powerful, and just hearing your own story is so powerful. So I'm super excited about the future, where we're going, what's happening in in creating films and videos and whatever. And I think it's a great time to be a filmmaker in Sudan, or an artist or whatever in Sudan right now.
For me, I think it's first and foremost, cinema is a personal journey of the filmmaker. Every person has a different background, a different baggage, and there's so many different ways to do it from the one person to the other. And I think everything has a meaning, depend who's telling the story and who you want to share to the story. So for example, in Djibouti there is a lot of different matters that could be we are very young as a country in the cinema world, but a lot of very talented people are upcoming and rising. So we're really hopeful for the future, and very excited about all the different stories that will be told by Djiboutian themselves.
Yeah, and to me, I just want to add one thing that Lula just mentioned. It's the whole idea of cinema is itself really young, but in the continent, a lot of times who we take as where do we get our ideas and who are we influenced by is a big thing. And I feel like because it's really hard to watch each other's films, it's really hard to watch other African films, and it's really hard to have this African conversation. It doesn't really happen that easily. That when you say there's young people coming on and all these filmmakers, is there's this disconnect between each other. So instead of answering each other with this art form, I feel it's easier to answer others. It's easier to watch established film industries than to watch each other films, and that's one thing that always like I think about, just whenever like I'm not able to watch enough, or I wasn't able for a while. Now it's easier for me, but it's still hard for most people to watch other people's films, other African films. So this is something that I put in my mind. It's just Djibouti is right next door, and I haven't been, and I haven't. It's really I know Lula personally. I haven't seen her films yet, so it's just that complexity.
Yeah, it's probably, Hajooj, I agree with you. It's probably because it hits home. We have a lot of different references that we have in common, and that's why sometimes it's not easy to watch film of the continent, you know.
Just a follow-up, because that's so, and I think you bring up, great points that lead to conversations about infrastructure and kind of barriers. Does this sort of inability to connect with each other's films across across countries on the continent mean, or make
Is
you
it
feel
only me, or I
that,
can't hear Rupa?
Oh, can you not hear me? Can anybody else hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm talking like I'm live from Sudan. Hajooj is live from Sudan, and Lula is in Djibouti. So, Global South internet, Global South feed live.
Not easy sometimes.
So, thank you for everyone's patience if we run into trouble. But I'm not sure, Hajooj, can you hear me now? Okay, I think
I can still hear you, Ruba.
And I can still hear you, Ruba too.
Okay, Lula, thank you. Well, I was yeah, I think Hajooj might need to drop off and rejoin again. But I was kind of asking if the inability to easily access other art or filmmaking on the continent also means that when you're working to produce your own work, you feel like you're working blindly almost, or that there's no blueprint. I mean, does it feel that way, or how does it feel? Because Lula, I know for you, for example, your film Dhalinyaro, I think, was the first feature.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
but still, even though it was the first, there's a lot of different great movies out there that you can watch and you can be inspired and so on. But I think it's less and less a problem because the technology now, it's like you can view films at a speed of craziness. So now it's better. But no, I was talking about what Hajooj was saying, that it was difficult for him to maybe, it wasn't maybe in the sense of access, but in the sense of maybe it hits more home. It's closer to his home than to other films, the African continent. I don't know if I'm making sense in that, what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, no, that makes
I understood it that way. It was not about sorry?
No, go ahead.
I think I understood in a way that when you're watching Marwa films or Hajooj films, of course I feel more close to their films than to other films, obviously, because we are in the same kind of not just the continent, but really close to each other and so on. So we have more references to each other. And movies like that maybe gives you more emotions and hits more home, than closer home than the other movies. That's what I was trying to say.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes perfect sense. I think that makes sense. Thank you for that, Lula. Marwa, so in Khartoum Offside, women were brought to life on many different levels. There is a diversity in age, in ethnicity or ethnic background, in moral viewpoints. How do you, and Lula as well, how do you depict women thoughtfully in your films? What are some conscious efforts you've made regarding the imagery you've incorporated when centering women in your films, and what stories need to be or have yet to be told?
I will take Hajooj answer again for this question, because I think we didn't have the chance to make movies. We didn't have the chance to have education. We didn't have the chance to. It's been like many years. So to reach that point that you as an individual female filmmaker, you are able to proceed actually with your passion in movies. And since cinema itself, it's a new art. It's not that ancient. So every kind of contribution from female filmmakers, not only in the African continent but also abroad, is it's a struggle and it's a battle. It's not that easy. So when I'm doing a movie, I really most of the time work from a personal background. So I go to what I believe in, what are my passions, and this is the main drive. So I take it from there, and definitely now most of my movies, the main characters are female characters, female leads, because I don't think it's balanced yet. And it's we still have a lot to tell stories. We still have a lot to share. We still have a lot to express. It's not that it's kind of it's not like a kind of a conflict, but it's kind of finally there is a space. Finally you can tell your own story with your own values, because when you are emerging and trying to come from a space that not really privileged, not really supported, so most of the time you don't have the freedom, you don't have the liberty to do as you really wish. So definitely, when I have the chance, I would fight for it, and I would choose what kind of character, what kind of story that inspire me, that comes from a personal space, that speaks, that I can stand for. Because making a movie, you are entering a very long journey. So you need to really believe in what you're doing, because if not, you're gonna lose your mind, because it's your time, it's your money, it's your energy. It's difficult. So for me, if it's not really coming from a deep place, I don't think I'm able to do it.
For me, I think I agree with Marwa when she saying that it really has to be something you're passionate about. Otherwise, you're gonna give up halfway. And for example, for me, for Dhalinyaro, it took me 5 years to do it. So if I was not really passionate about it, and I didn't even realize that it took 5 years. When I finished, I realized it took 5 years. But if I really wasn't passionate about it, it's been a long time that I would have left. And for me, as a Djiboutian, it was really, if someone comes to Djibouti for the first time, and he visits the Djibouti for the first time, the first thing that they will notice will be women. They're everywhere. They're everywhere, from the ministry position to the lady that mops the floor and everything that goes in between. So for me to be able to, I wanted to do it something about young people, but it wasn't at the beginning. I wasn't sure that it would be 3 girls or 2 girls or 1 boy or 2 boys or 1 girl. The reason it became 3 girls is because when I was doing my research, I went back to high school, and each day for about 2 to 3 months, I sat at the back of a class and I just let myself inspired by what was coming, and this world that I did not no longer belong to, because I'm not 18 anymore. And at the end of each class, the girls were coming to see me, and we just chat about everything, not the boys. Probably because being a woman, it was easier for the girls to come and chat with me. And that's how actually the idea of 3 girls leading the film was born. It wasn't really premeditated, and because people say now, oh, you're feminist, you're always talking about women, because the short film was 3 women, the feature film is 3 girls, and so on. But it wasn't something premeditated at all. And the question I asked myself when I was doing the film, when I was co-writing, when I was filming, and so on, the main question I was asking myself was I being authentic? Was I telling the truth? Was I close enough to their feelings, to these girls' feelings, and how they are in this transition in their life? So that was really the most question, the very important question I was asking myself. I wasn't really asking about myself, they're girls, I should be acting this way or filming this way. No, the question I was asking my friend was about authenticity. Was I telling the truth? Was I close enough to the truth? That's the question I was asking myself all along the way, even during when we were doing editing and so on. So that's why.
Wow, thank you. That's beautiful. I mean, I think it says a lot about how we don't, have to force ourselves to be inspired by women or girls or our stories. They're just a part of life. And if you study life as an artist, just like any artist does, you naturally find these stories. I think that's beautiful. Kind of what you said. Thank you for that. So I think, you know, in a similar vein, Lula, like, you found these stories and chose to reflect them. And I guess my question would be, you know, gender and visual culture, you know, almost seem as opposites in many of the predominantly conservative or Muslim parts of our communities. So in Dhalinyaro, how were you able to succeed in representing or reflecting gender or other quite discussed issues, you know, such as ambition and class and premarital sex and miscarriages and parent-daughter relationships? So there was a lot there.
Again, that question helped me all the way through the process. Am I being authentic? And of course, talking about teenage and not talk about certain issues, for example, sex and so on, it wouldn't be serious. Like, so I had to talk about those issues, but I have to find angles how I could talk about these different issues, because obviously I could not, for example, I could show, but I did not want to show, for example, two young people kissing, because if I'd show, that means I wasn't really telling the truth, because in public here, no one kiss. Lovers don't kiss each other. These things are for home, you know, it's an intimate thing. So how should I be able to film those things? It's very tricky. It's not really taboo. It's very tricky. It just forces you to be more creative. That's how I found it. It helps me in a sense, because you don't fall into the easy things of, you know, filming obvious scenes and so on. It really forces you to be more creative. It forces you because you have to know your society. Even though Dhalinyaro is not only made for Djiboutian and it's for everyone, but I had my community here had to be able to watch the film without cringing. And for that, you really have to surpass yourself and just be able to film in a way that is not very obvious. For me, I think it helped me because it really forces me to be more creative.
Yeah, there was a beautiful scene that if you don't mind me telling you, in Dhalinyaro, where the electricity cut off towards the end, and when it came back on, there were these quick scenes of, you know, a couple who looked like, or I don't know what they were doing, and I think that was kind of the point. And they come apart, and there was
yes.
artist, and then he
got whole ambiguity, you know, because something happens. It's like after the rain, things are just so beautiful, birds are singing, there's new hopes and so on. And when there is a shortage, it's the same kind of feeling. So in the dark, things happened. Were they kissing? Were they trying to kiss? Who knows, you know, but they were out there. The same thing that the guy who was doing the graffiti. Things happens when in the dark.
Yeah, I think that was a very beautiful and poetic and a real way of capturing it. And I think it goes back to what you and Hajooj were saying earlier about how when we watch each other's movies, something just feels so much closer. I think I really related to that scene. You know, the streets of Khartoum and Sudan are also very dark, and the electricity cuts off, and I think things happen as well when it gets dark.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, well, I think you started to mention cultural taboos, and I think an interesting aspect of what you called authenticity, Lula, is thinking about, you know, maybe, I mean, hopefully I'm not misunderstanding you, but, you know, when your audience watches your film, how do they feel? Like, are the scenes you know, scenes that they can sit through? So you know, a question to all of you is how do cultural taboos ever affected your work, you know? And are they inspiration? Are they barriers to your storytelling? How do they affect your work and the way that you represent your communities or your stories or yourself?
I think for me, it just makes work more interesting and more, because there's always a way to say what you want to say. You know, always a way. You can find always an angle to talk about what you want to talk about it. Perhaps not in a out there way, perhaps you have to be subtle or less subtle and so on, but there's always an angle you can find. And that's what taboo does. It really forces you to think out of the box.
Yeah, for me, I feel like I loved what Lola was saying about authenticity, and that's what I also like, and like the whole idea of her sitting in the back of a class and researching and being there and being part of it and living it and telling the story from inside. So to me, as long as I'm authentic and I'm real, then I'll show it. But also I care that yeah, my audience doesn't cringe. But then the audience who I'm filming. I mean, Sudan is really complicated because there's so many different cultures, and I haven't been making films for the main mainstream culture of Sudan. I've been making it for a subgroup. So for me, it's that subgroup. I want them to sit and watch and enjoy the film, and that's not cringe. And so I've been creating films subtle enough for them to do that and say what, like Lula said, just say whatever I want. But I feel like what she said about authenticity is a big thing for me. Like, it's just being real, like being like, you watch the film and you be like, oh, this is really what it is. This is a part of Sudan that I can, even if I didn't experience it, I can trust this is real. So there's that subtleness in filmmaking where you can feel it, that the filmmaker went all the way to make it, to try to capture that. Especially in fictional films where you're like, you can just fly and do whatever. You can have the French kiss if you wanted, but if it doesn't make sense, you can still do it so people. There's the so-called cinema language, and then there's the I'm creating this story. And for me, I actually come more from visual art, and I lack super interest in cinema. It's not just about cinema. It's about what this medium does to people, and it's so changing as a medium. So I'm discovering it while I'm creating it, while my audience are doing it. So yeah, my audience comes really in mind, and I really care about authenticity, and I really understood what Lula was saying. I really like
it. For me, I agree with Lula and Hajooj, and also, if I can say that, so I appreciate very much that there is kind of responsibility how you deal with taboos and how you handle them in a visual way in your movies. And definitely, as Lula said, it makes you think outside the box, and it challenges you to find a way. But also, definitely, there is a barrier, because at some point, I would really appreciate pushing the boundaries, and I would try to be a little bit radical somehow, not in a way that it's insensitive, not in a way that it's in your face, but in a very subtle way as well, but to push things little bit forward, not that in a responsible way as well. So there is this balance I'm trying to reach between, yes, I'm not being insensitive to the audience, but also I'm trying to be true to myself as a filmmaker who really wants to like expand and push the boundaries and try to break little bit those taboos little by little. And this is something I really believe in my in my movies. And the other thing with authenticity, I think without authenticity, like, there is no good movie. Like, really, without being true, without being real, without being a true researcher, without this true curiosity of the story, of the characters, of the place, of the time, I don't think movies can be produced, can be created without authenticity. And while making the movie, while trying to give because when you make a movie, you want to be part of it. You want to get the people into it. You want them to join you in this journey where you are. But also there is a kind of responsibility towards your own interest and your own concern about the visual language, about the content, about the character. So yeah, there is this balance.
Well, we have, both, like, I think, there's a combination of different experiences here. So we have like documentary filmmaking, and then we have, telling a fictional story. So like Marwa, for example, like when you're pushing the envelope a little bit, like trying to break a barrier or challenge a barrier in your work, like, how do you communicate that to the people? For example, like the women in Khartoum Offside, like, were they scared or excited? Did they push you or did you push them? What was that relationship like when you're, talking about something that maybe is a cultural taboo for a lot of people, and you're depicting like actual real human beings and not just telling a story?
Actually, I could be a bit more radical if it was not a documentary. But because of a documentary, I carry the responsibility that, yes, I want to push the boundaries, I want to go beyond those limitations, but also I want the film to be seen, and I want the film to be received by the girls, by the families, by the society, by the people that I were filming. There is this responsibility I cannot deny, or I cannot hide behind it. So in Khartoum Offside, it was clear that it's a documentary, but also I come from also a fiction background, so I wanted to, make a documentary that's not really informative, not really classic, not really that can go to the peoples in a simple way, but also in a smart way. So in simple and smart, so people would enjoy it, but also they would receive few things like I've been trying to put very sensitively in between the scenes, so they swallow the whole movie, and then maybe after they watch the whole movie they will think, but they did this, or there is this scene. So it's not in your face, and I wish all the people, or most of the people, receive it like that. But I spend a lot of time. It took me almost 4 years and a half to know how to handle this critical, controversial, difficult kind of story in a way that it goes beyond the controversial part, and goes to the whole people, goes to the ordinary Sudanese man and woman, and they receive the movie. For me, this was the challenge. And I think Lola, when she was talking about that, I really respect that so much, because it's really easy to do what you are expected to do. And I think Hajooj, I think we all at some point of our journey with our movies, it would be much easier if we forget about this responsibility and of this authenticity a little bit, and we compromise, and we did things a little bit spicy. We put a little bit, a little bit of scenes here and scenes here to make it explode worldwide. But I believe I wouldn't be authentic enough for this. And for me, that was the main thing. I wanted to make a movie that's real, that it's true to the Sudanese people first, and then to the whole world.
Yeah, thank you for that, Marwa. I think that's very interesting. I kind of came in thinking, maybe cultural taboos create like a struggle between, the filmmaker and their own culture. But I'm also hearing that there's this struggle between our cultures and kind of what's expected, maybe the standards for filmmaking, or what's normal internationally. And so authenticity with, your actual audience that you're working for or towards is the priority. And I think that's a really interesting thing to think about. So I guess I just want to know generally, you know, at this point, we kind of covered this, but maybe if y'all have, you know, personal examples or can talk about it more generally, what drives you to storytelling and where does your storytelling come from? How does storytelling in general manifest as a practice in your communities? How does storytelling manifest in Black, African, and SWANA cinema in general? You know, so what's your relationship with storytelling, and what drives you to do it, and where does it come from? Where have you seen it? Maybe we can hear from all of you. Hajooj, maybe you can go first.
Well, for me, it's a little weird. I don't stick per se to story. I mean, story is the basic form of communication and just telling the story, what happened today, how are you, how was your day, and whatnot. So it comes with, but actually, I'm not when I make films, it's more about the environment. So to me, the overall story is sometimes the idea of story and storytelling, which is super part of your normal day and everything, not just, I think, not just African, just the whole world. But I actually don't come to it as when I think film, I don't come to it as story. So to me, I'm not, which is weird to say, but yeah, I'm more about the environment and creating this space and creating this thing and throwing you in the middle of it, and in the end, you don't even know what I wanted to tell you. So sometimes I like that. I like that experimentation with where it is, and just using this medium the way I want it. I want it to be, and just admitting that I'm just not really a student of film or cinema, or not even care that much about it. It's just like destruction of cinema would be an amazing thing if you can do it. And actually, I'm enjoying a lot how it's being destroyed by not being able to go to cinema, not being able to this, and just Netflix destroying everything and just creating series, and just people are watching garbage and consuming it. And I'm just this whole like notion of what it is that people are creating. It's just now there's like these formulas that work so well that, like, why do you even need filmmakers? AI can create films the way films are being created right now. It's just all that to me is amazing, and the ease of creation. Just I think that's the reason why I'm able to create films. It's just because it trickled down and it just became way much easier. I wouldn't have been able to create films like 30 years ago, where actually you needed so much to create films. So to me, the idea of story and whatnot is it's still the basic way form of talking, but there's the complication of what it is our medium is, and how amazing it is, and how it excites people to watch. Um, so a lot of times when I was creating films, when like the past 2 years, I've been just an activist, so I haven't been really in filmmaking. But it's great to see my films being used as a tool to get people together. So once they're together, they can organize and do whatnot. So it's an amazing thing to have this projection and get all these people together and just get them talking about like one incident that is different. So yeah, the complexity. Moving it on.
Sorry, but the what's going on with movies right now, it excites you. It doesn't freak you out at all, not even a little bit. Kind of with cinemas closing and everything. I mean, I don't know. This is a very
No,
interesting filmmaker.
no. I mean, I'm from Sudan. Yeah, we don't have an industry, so
True.
it's not gonna freak me out. Yeah, like I'm not losing a job because things are closing down. I'm not part of an industry. I'm not part of any creation. I'm not being quickly like given money to create films anyways. So to me, when this is happening, it actually makes it a little bit more flat. So other people are closer to where I am. So I'm like sitting and writing and creating my films, and now things are closer to where I am. So it's actually I'm more comfortable working in this really harsh terrain, and yeah, I'm still gonna make my films. I'm still writing a couple of films, and the industry doesn't. I feel like films have gotten to the point of becoming really bad, and to me, like this helps. This helps move things around a little bit. So now let's see how you guys do when it's different. So I'm
I
excited.
love
I like change. I'm a revolutionary. I'm always down to change. Change is always
that.
good.
I
and
love that.
and I think part of it is what the status quo now doesn't work for me or for a lot of people like me. So any revolution within it, any change within it, any destruction of it is great.
Well said. Maybe Marwa or Lula.
I think for me, I think the desire to tell a story could come from a dream or a personal event that happened in your life, or the desire to change, like Hajooj said, or modify the environment you live in. It really depends. Each story depends of who is telling the story and who he wants to tell to. And first and foremost, for me, it's a human experience. It's really a human experience, and that's how I feel when I'm trying to. It's like it's a human experience that lasts 5 years, and then you go to the next step and you do another story, and then another story, and so on. Because stories you hear every day, it really depends what touches you. And in Djibouti, for example, it's more theater or fable, or poetry. People are used to that. Very, really less. We don't have like Sudan. We don't have a cinema industry yet, but a lot of plays, a lot of fable, and so on. So it really depends. The story. Each story is important. It really depends who's carrying the story and who you're trying to tell to.
Lula, how do you follow up? How do you know if a story is yours to tell, or if you're the right person to tell a story? Because I remember earlier you also said, it just depends on who's telling the story, but every story is important.
For example, for Dhalinyaro, literally for 5 years, I slept with Dhalinyaro, I woke up with Dhalinyaro, I ate with Dhalinyaro, the story, and so on. It really is like it habit me, like it was living inside me. So it was otherwise it's been a long time that I would have, because otherwise you don't last. It's so long and a very hard work. It has to be a passionate road. Otherwise, it's very difficult. And when a story really you want to tell the story, because it grows in you. It really grows in you.
What about you, Marwa?
I agree and disagree with Hajooj a little bit, and I agree and disagree with Lula a little bit as well. So I think it's a good time for cinema to have this kind of rupture, because it's true. It has been really difficult. It has been really tough. It has been really crazy kind of industry for years, and it doesn't make sense. So this 2020 and this kind of closeness of all cinemas, and this loss that has been happening this year is really good, that a change is needed and a change is coming. So in that way, I'm definitely agree that it's an amazing moment to take this dark moment and try to find some light within it. Other thing is, since the beginning of cinema, there was always a space for visual arts in film, like film as an essay, film as poetry, film as it's not only as a story, which is I appreciate, and I've been missing this kind of cinema that goes beyond the classic way of storytelling, that goes beyond the normal kind of movies, because movies is art as well. So we are missing the art in the movies for so long, and I hope by this rupture that's happening now, we go back that, okay, movies, like music, like dance, like it can hold this art again, and we can express it with or without the story. So in that point, I really agree, but I disagree with you, Hajooj, little bit, because I feel a bit pessimistic. It's really tough. It's really difficult, and with no answers how it goes with this Netflix, with all what's happening now. I to be honest, I feel little bit lost, a little bit missing a kind of direction. But maybe this is the change. Maybe this is what needs time. And I'm asking you: is it a way to see things, that no, it's fine to be lost. It's fine that we don't know our movies, how it will be screened. I don't want the movie to be screened on the laptop. I miss the people. I miss the audience. I want to have this kind of interaction again. I want cinema to be open. So in that way, I'm a bit concerned, to be honest. This is for Hajooj. I try to also give a little feedback on Lula's words. Definitely, stories hunts you, and when you, I think about it as if you are as if you have this necessity, and if you don't do it, you feel sick. Like I feel sometimes you have this pain in the stomach, and it will not go unless you write a scene, unless you talk to the composer, unless you find the actor, unless you find the location, unless you get the fund, unless you it's always, I think with movie making, it's now I'm being a bit tough. It's really sad industry, because it's really eats you. It eats you to get things done, and it hunts you also for years, and you don't really realize it until it's past. So it's true that movies can take 4 or 5 years, and you don't realize it in the first year or the second year. But then when you finish the movie and you're happy with the applause and la la la, you find out, wow, this was 5 years. So in that case, it's a tough journey, but definitely it's worth it, because we know by the end of the day that it's really difficult to make a movie from this continent. It's really difficult. It's like Mission Impossible, and this continent is like, has been struggling with many kind of expectation and cliche images and cliche stories, and actually very false kind of history. And it's our time now to rewrite and to reconstruct, and actually to distract as well, and then to try to find out that, okay, if we have now the right to tell our stories, we need to tell it right. We need to tell it how we really feel it, how we really live it, not as we are expected to. So yeah, this is what I have for this.
Well, you're right, Marwa, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to last 4 years and a half with Khartoum Offside. Mine, it was 5 years. If it doesn't eat you from inside out, you give up a long time ago. So it has to do that. So we achieve what we're doing, which is sometimes craziness.
Yeah.
And I think, like you said, it's about time that history is written from within. That means things that happen in Sudan has to be put on set and filmed and so on by Sudanese. Not that I have anything wrong that other people do as well, but I think it's about time that the perspective change. And the other thing I want to say is, for example, for my case, even though we don't have an industry in Djibouti, when it comes for my short film and the feature film, both films were co-financed by Djibouti. And when I mean Djibouti, it means the private and the public sector of Djibouti. even though there is no industry, even though there is no somewhere where you do your file and you set up your file. We don't have that yet. Hopefully it will come in the near future, but still both of the film were heavily co-funded by Djibouti, and I'm really very, very proud of that and it's about time that African continent, Africa, finance their films as well.
Okay, I have to just correct you on one thing. We don't have an industry in Sudan
at all.
We just happen to have islands of people who struggle, and mainly they're people in the diaspora who struggle for years to get their films made. We don't have an industry, not even close, and we don't have funding that comes from inside, other than like you pay for your own stuff, or films that are
we don't
super
have that
micro finance. Yeah. So we just, when you're saying it, it just implies as if we do in Sudan. We don't.
No, I
yeah,
know. I was just saying that even though there is no industry, for example, in Djibouti or in Sudan, for example, in Djibouti, I did a fundraising. That's how I managed to get the money, both for the short and the feature film. We don't have an industry, believe me, as well.
That's amazing. We should try to do that in Sudan, do fundraising internally and see how that works. I'll try that next. But yeah, I totally agree with you guys about the whole idea of, I used to say that artists, I actually don't understand how people who are not artists live, or why they live, or what is it about them. But
Thanks,
for
Hajooj.
art, there's this little God complex. I mean, you're right. So you're not far off. But the whole idea of I think we have this, or I say at least I have it, a little God complex where I have to create, and when I spend a certain amount of time not creating, I actually go crazy, and literally go crazy. Like, it's not about just the idea of whenever I have a film in my mind and I'm working on it. That's actually the easiest part in the world. It's like, oh, okay, I'm dealing with something. When I'm not, I'm just going crazy. I have to like sit down, I have to draw, I have to create something, I have to think about something, I have to have this project going on. So it's actually, cinema for me and film is easier because I'm like, okay, cool, I can work on this thing for 2 to 4 years or something, and I'm working on it, so I'm occupied, so I feel fine that I have this thing. When I didn't have that, it was I'm just going crazy. So there's this whole, I guess, what Marwa and Lula talked about is the passion that drives you, where this is not a job, because if it's a job, it's a really bad job. Like, I can make money, do something else, but it's the passion. It's the passion to create. It's the whole creativity and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that conversation. That was really lovely to listen to. And personally, I really like the idea that by watching all of your films, I'm helping you maintain your sanity, since apparently you go insane without creating. So you're welcome, Hajooj. No, I'm just playing. But Hajooj, both of your films, okay, Beats of the Antonov and aKasha, they're heavy with themes very specific to your cultures, our cultures, and you mentioned earlier even creating for a specific subgroup and not just the general Sudanese person. So, can you speak about the themes in your films and how they relate to your communities and, also your lived experiences?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, for people who haven't seen them, they're both set in a war zone. One is a documentary, one is a narrative, and they're both set in a war zone, and they both talk about the war, but more about identity and what it means to be Sudanese who lived in a country that was in war all the time. So through the idea of culture and arts and dance and whatnot, I examine the idea of identity and where we want to go forward and who we are as a people. And challenging the mainstream idea that we're just Islamic Arabized country, and trying to like go further by just showing images that that's not just true. If you believe in that, then this doesn't make sense. What you're seeing in front of you doesn't make sense. But if you believe what you see in front of you, and that goes back to authenticity and trying to be real, then Sudan is way deeper, and there's way more than just the simplicity of Sufis who took over Sudan and make it Arabic. So there's more complexity to that. So yeah, so I try watching the films. To me, I was always trying to make the films interesting, fun, rich culturally, musically, image wise, ideas wise, and at the same time having all these themes that sometimes are become super complicated. Even for me, like with aKasha, I was like trying to talk about revolution and the loss of the passion to revolution when because what happened in aKasha is like it's been years of revolution. I was living in the war zone, and the war started in 2011. By 2016, we were just done by the war. It was just like the rhetoric of revolution, the talk is just didn't mean anything to us anymore. And we were just trying to live our normal lives, just people trying to have fun and whatever. So just trying to like show that within the film was what I wanted to create. And while making it, I was in my mind was always us in the war zone, sitting there and watching the film and just laughing and enjoying it or not, and realizing, yeah, we live in this reality that's just stuck. And now in Sudan, just with the revolution and everything, and getting to the point where I'm actually seeing we're going towards that again, where we're like the revolution rhetoric is BS. It's to me the film now that makes sense is Animal Farm. Is this what I'm seeing in my head a lot? Is just like this. I keep saying this. It's just like I somebody needs to do a Sudanese remake of Animal Farm. I'll work on it for sure as a theater piece because it feels like we went to a revolution and now there's some animals have more rights than others, and the pigs look like the humans. It just feels like this is what we are right now, and we're trying like how do you break this? How do you move on with your revolution? Uh, yeah, now that you put your people there and suddenly they don't look like you anymore. So yeah, so these are the different themes that are always in my head. It's just like uh, getting like living life within this place and changing. Like if you talked to me a few years ago, my ideas were different, and I think part of a revolution is you can start changing your own ideas or what you want to tackle or how you see people. And I think that the nice thing about Sudan and the complexity about Sudan is because we have so many cultures. So when you're in different places, you think really differently. And I feel like Khartoum is it's this urban city, yeah. So it looks like any other urban city where everything comes into it, and you start looking more like other urban cities than what Sudan really or the other parts of Sudan are. They're all real. So to me, I'm always interested in Khartoum culture. I'm always like, wow, this is really weird. These people are strange. But when I'm in other places, it's simpler to be yourself and relaxed and less tense. And even how Sudan, the thing about Sudan, we always, and that you got earlier talking about taboos, and everybody mentioned it, but in Sudan, it's easier not to talk about them. It's easier to deal with them. So in other places, it's very easy to deal with things, but the moment you name them, they become impossible to deal with because they shouldn't exist. But you see, society deals with it, and I feel like when I was living in other places of Sudan, there was a very fluid identity of gender that existed, and people could be all the way from feminine, masculine, female, male, in the middle. It was so easy to deal with, but nobody mentioned words, and I think Sudan deals with that by not mentioning it. And I wonder in film how we can show it. And I did that. I showed things that people normally would have problem with, but they'll watch it in the film and say nothing. Um, like in aKasha, people were eating pig, and most of them were Muslim because that's what really happens, and nobody cares. That's what happens there. But that's the thing. There's just like how do you do thing, and then you talk like a lot of Sudanese people talk about like Chinese people eat dogs, and in Sudan people eat dogs, but you don't talk about it. People eat insects in Sudan. We eat insects. Like there's all these things that we do, but we just don't talk about it. And I like the idea of like having those within films, and I think you can do it easier with fiction, where you show it and just like be like you show it as an everyday thing, and then so there's all these things you can do, and yeah, I'm excited about cinema. Marwa, and I know it's hard to make, but I'm just like I'm trying to create the space to make it a little bit easier for cinema of a certain level, like microfinance cinema and stuff. So we're doing all these projects where we're putting together equipment and stuff. So equipment is available, and yeah, people need to figure out how to do the rest. So the creation of micro finance films, I think, will be easy, and I'm hoping, and I'm planning, and I'm working on this revolution of Sudanese films that I think will hit after 5 years. So after 5 years, I think you'll be seeing 10 Sudanese features every year, and we're not semi-industry. You have to work on it.
Yeah, fingers crossed as well, Marwa. That would be incredible. Thank you for that. Very, very nuanced and incredible answer, Hajooj. I'd like to ask all of you, what are some examples of cinema specific to your culture or general African culture, or, Southwest Asian, North African culture that you really loved? Like we were saying earlier, there's not a lot of exposure to these films. So I don't know if y'all can throw out recommendations or talk about something that inspired you, or, if you don't have any, then that's also kind of a point to make. So what do you say?
I mean, for me, I'm now excited about the films that are being made close to me. So the films of Wanuri from Kenya, the films from Sudan, like the 3 films that just came out last year were all exciting, and people should definitely watch them. Marwa's films, the film talking about trees, Cypress Malbari, and Amjad Breida's film, You'll Die 20. So yeah, just having those films, they're the closest to mine because they were close. But then I've been seeing films from, West Africa has been having a lot more films, and of course Nigeria. I've actually watched a lot of Nigerian Hollywood, and I enjoy them. Whatever, they're fun. But yeah, I mean, recently I've been watching more and more African films, and South Africa produces a lot. So there's a lot of good South African films, and some of them, even if they're not, they're a little strange. Like District 9 was by a South African, maybe white, but it still has that thing about it that you cringe and part of it, and you enjoy a lot other parts of it. So I'm enjoying any kind of films that are coming out of Africa. So yeah, there's so many.
Thanks for those recs. Before Marwa and Lula jump in with any recommendations, I wanted to mention that we do have minutes to take a couple.
I rewatched recently Osman Samben, one of his movies called Le Mandat, Mandabi. I don't know if you guys saw it, Hajooj and Marwa, Ruba. Mandabi, really lovely, very nice. It's an old movie film, but very nice film. And I liked as well, I think it was maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, Mercy of the Jungle. Joel Karikazi, beautiful film as well. And I don't know the director, but and I just watched it on TV the other day. Adam, I don't know the director of that movie. Beautiful movie. It was on Canal Plus.
The Moroccan movie? Yeah. Is it the Moroccan?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's a lady who did it.
Yes. I also just saw it a few weeks ago. Mariam Tozani, thank you. Yeah.
Film, as well. So, but of course, there's a lot of wonderful films to be seen.
Yeah, there's Lamp by Yared. There's like so many good. The old films are actually, to me, are always so challenging because they made such amazing films that I'm like, ooh, let me not try to even like that's another level of filmmaking.
Yeah, like they did that in the 60s and the 70s, and like now we are complaining. It's like, yeah, it's quite inspiring actually to rewatch like
Yeah.
classic African movies. Now I'm trying to just I'm having some scenes from Teza, from Haile Grema, and I'm really like trying to also find out which kind of movies. Senegalese cinema have been pioneered for years, and definitely Egyptian movies, Egyptian cinema back in the days was much more revolutionary and open. It's
In what ways?
yeah. Now, if I can name in ways of how the industry deals with movies, like who produce, who writes. I think it's a big question, but I believe the Egyptian cinemas have been going through stages, like the beginning, because it was like one of the first countries that have been making movies. But yeah, it has. For example, now I would definitely remember and appreciate watching Dawood Abdel movies, all of them, like Kit Kat, Ard El Khouf. I would really watch them all again. Khairi Bshara. I would watch the 80s, like end of 70s, 80s. I would see myself really inspired by them. Now, lately, I fell in love definitely with Felicity for Alain Gomis.
Indeed.
And it was a beautiful piece to watch. Yeah, it's many. But again, as Hajooj said, it's really, there is difficulty to enjoy the African movies. Like in the cinema now, definitely with the VOD, with the platforms online, it could be easier.
More
But
accessible.
yeah, it would take time, but at least now we can access them somehow.
I have to mention Sankofa.
Not in the cinema, but at least in our.
You just mentioned a film by Haile Germa.
Sankofa
Sankofa was definitely one of the films that inspired me to be a filmmaker. Sankofa, amazing.
Yeah.
And there's
that's right.
platform called Cinewax. I don't know if you guys know Cinewax. It only has African movies on the platform. Cinewax.
Can you add?
Okay.
Cinewax. Let me check.
Okay. For all the recommendations, y'all, I think everybody tuning in and myself were super excited to take it as homework and kind of expand our visual libraries with these films. Hopefully we can find access to them because that's a big issue. But yeah, like Hajooj said, I'm really looking forward to maybe in 5 years having a film renaissance in Sudan, or maybe the beginning of one. So I'm gonna hold you to that prediction.
And work on it. We need. It's not just we need to work on it.
Okay, not
the
just
more people
hopes
who believe in it and be like, okay, this is gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Okay.
But it is. I think there's a lot of people who are excited about film. Film is exciting to a lot of people in Sudan. There's so many people who call themselves filmmakers in Sudan. So I'm like, we just need to give them the tools to become filmmakers.
Yeah.
So I feel like the availability of the tools would make that move towards creation of films. And you'll see, we're working on a festival. So we'll see how it works. So I'm really hoping in 5 years.
Okay. If anybody is Sudanese or interested in Sudanese film is watching this, take note. We have your back, Hajooj. We have your back, Marwa. We have your back, Lula. I think this is a good place to wrap up. I just wanted to mention the spelling of the website that Lula mentioned is Cinewax, Cinewax, for anybody who's interested in checking it out. But I would say that's it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Hajooj. Thank you, Marwa. Thank you, Lula. I just want to note that some of the films that we discussed tonight are on show as part of the film festival, like Dhalinyaro and Khartoum Offside. So head over to our Eventive page to pick up a ticket or pass, so you can engage with and support incredible artists and all the work coming out of the SWANA region and the East African region. Thank you all very much for being here tonight. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And I really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ruba, for making this happen and putting all us together. That's very lovely.
Anytime. All right. Let's bye to the audience.
Bye.
Bye.